How can we assess God's supernatural provision? We can take scripture 2 Kings chapter 3 and 4. We can see two powerful stories here. In chapter 3, the army had no water for 7 days and they were in desperate need of water. In chapter 4, a poor widow was in desperate need of money to pay off her debts. Both were in crisis, but both received provision in a supernatural overflowing way. In chapter 3, verse 28 says, "Suddenly there was water everywhere." In chapter 4, verse 6, we see every container the widow borrowed was filled to the brim with oil. But here's something to notice. Before God gives the provision, He asked them to do something. In chapter 3, they were told to dig the ditches in the valley. In chapter 4, the widow was told to borrow empty vessels. So number 1, obedience creates capacity. If the soldiers didn't dig the ditches, there would have been no place for the water to stay. A ditch is simply a hole, but it's that empty space that holds the provision. Without it, the water would have flowed away and they would have nothing to drink. So the amount of water they received depended on how deep and how many ditches they dug. The deeper the ditch, the more water it could hold. It's the same with the widow. If her son had only brought a few vessels, then only few would have been filled, meaning they could only sell a little and make a small amount of money. But look at what it says in 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 6. It says, "Soon every container was full to the brim. Bring me another jar," she said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her. Then the olive oil stopped flowing. The oil didn't stop because the source ran out. It stopped because there was no more vessels. If they had brought hundreds of jars, the oil would have kept flowing. They could have started an olive oil business and become wealthy. God's oil doesn't flow to be wasted. It flows into what we prepared. And when there is no more room, the flow stops. Normally, producing that much oil would take 3 to 5 years. But in her case, it was God's provision. So time didn't matter to Him. He can do anything in a second what would take years. God is ready to answer. But the question is, are we ready to receive it? Do we have the space and capacity to hold God's blessing? Because God's provision is not meant to be wasted. The second thing we need to understand is, when God provides, He doesn't just meet the need, He provides in abundance. In 2 Kings chapter 3 verse 17 to 18, God tells them that providing water for their army is actually a small thing for Him. He says, "You shall not see wind, nor shall you see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, so that you, your cattle, and your animals may drink." And in verse 18 we can see, "This is a simple matter in the sight of the Lord. He will also deliver the Moabites into your hand." God didn't stop at providing water just to meet their need. He gave them water for all their cattle and animals and even granted them victory over Moab. We can again see this abundant provision in chapter 4 in verse 7. God not only provided enough oil to pay off widow's debt, but also gave her so much oil that she and her son could live off the rest. In both of these stories, we see something about God's heart. When we ask Him just to meet our current need, He responds with overflowing abundance. Because this is who He is. This is the character of our God. He is the God who loves to provide more than we ask. He is the Father who delights in blessing us above and beyond what we expected. But here's the truth. What often blocks that abundance is our own disobedience. The delay to dig the ditches due to hot climate, the hesitation to borrow the vessel from a neighbor because of the shame and embarrassment. But sometimes to receive from the Lord, it will cost us something. It may cost our comfort, it may cost our life, it may cost our reputation. But if we are willing to pay and obey, even it costs us something, we will receive in abundance. In 2 Kings chapter 3, those workers had no water to drink for 7 days. They were literally dehydrated, dry, exhausted, and desperate for water. Yet even in that condition, they obeyed the Lord and started digging ditches under the blazing sun with no water inside. Maybe they were thinking, is this really worth it? Why are we doing this? There is no sign of wind or rain. This doesn't make any sense. We are wasting our last bit of strength. For what? But here's what they didn't know. Their need was about to met, not through what they expected, but through a source they didn't even know existed. They thought this would only come from rain and wind. But God already told them. In verse 16 we can see, "You will neither see wind nor rain, yet this valley will be filled with water." And I believe that's what God is saying to you right now. Your situation might look like a dry, empty valley, but believe me when I say, your valley will be filled with pools of water. But here's what you need to know so your faith won't grow weak. You won't see wind, you won't see any rain. There might not be any signs of what you're believing for, but your pool will be filled because the source is me, not the sky. So the question is, can you borrow the vessel? Can you dig the ditches with this in your mind? Can you obey me even when there's no signs of possibility? Because if you are ready to do your part, I am ready to do mine. And the same goes to the widow's son. The boy could have said, "What's the point of borrowing all these empty jars? We only have one little flask of olive oil. This doesn't make any sense." But what he didn't realize that there was a flow already prepared, a supernatural supply that was just waiting for the vessel to pour into. The oil is ready to flow, but are we ready with the vessels? Are we prepared with obedience even it doesn't make any sense? Another thing we can notice is found in 2 Kings chapter 3 verse 20. It says that water suddenly appeared and it was flowing from the direction of Edom. Now if you look at the history and geography of Edom, it's a dry desert region. There was no water there. It is literally the last place anyone would expect water to come from. And that's exactly where the water came from. Sometimes God works in our life like that. He brings provision, answers, miracles from the least expected places, from the people we never imagined, from the situation we never thought. So when God moves in a way that surprises you, don't doubt it just because it doesn't match your expectation. God just needs one drop to gush out water. He doesn't need perfect condition. He doesn't need to follow the usual path. And the same is true with the widow and her oil. They probably didn't understand where the oil was coming from. All they saw was jar after jar getting filled from just one little flask. They didn't need to understand the sign behind the miracle. They just need to obey. And I believe God is saying to you right now, keep trusting, keep obeying. Even if you don't see any sign of possibility, stay expectant and ready, because God's supernatural provision will open at the right time, not in our way, but in His way. God bless you.